Hello everyone. In Tokyo and Japan in general, with increasing interest rate and a lot of empty houses, you might wonder whether it makes more sense to rent or buy the house you're living in. So today I'm going to give you an easy to follow process to try figuring it out. And even if you're not living in Japan, you're going to learn a few interesting things. So please stick around. Let's start with the easy part, renting. When you're renting a home, you pay a rent every month. You multiply that by 12 and you know how much you're paying for a year. And all that money goes to your landlord and disappears. For example, if we are in Tokyo and you take a family-size apartment, the average rent monthly is 192,000 yen. You multiply by 12 and you have 2.3 million yen a year you're paying in rent. And if you're not familiar with Japanese yen, I'm putting the USD equivalent for all of you. So that's pretty simple. If we're talking about owning a house, it's a little bit different because you have to consider things like property taxes, maintenance, and finally, mortgage. So it's very difficult to compare apple to apple. That's why you have to consider something called the cost of ownership. And once you know your cost of ownership for every year, it's easier to compare whether renting is less expensive than buying or vice versa. And credit where credit is due. I got the idea for this video a year ago when I watched Humphrey debating this subject about the US market. I did my take at the time, but a lot of things have changed, so that's why we have a new video today. I'm linking all those references down below for you. So now, let's talk about ownership. Let's start with property taxes. In Japan, the average property tax is 1.4% of the value of the land and 1.4% of the value of the building. There are some tax deductions based on specific situation, but for the sake of our calculation, we're just going to stick with 1.4%. If we take the average home purchase price in Tokyo of 45 million yen multiplied by 1.4%, we have a total of 630,000 yen per year on property tax. And experts tell us to take 1% of the purchase price of a house just for maintenance every year. 1% of our house would come to 450,000 yen per year just in maintenance, for a total of 1,080,000 yen just for those 2 points. Let's talk about mortgage. When you take a mortgage, you usually have a down payment and the remaining that you finance. The down payment is usually 20%. That's what's recommended. In our example of a 45 million yen house, the down payment of 20% would be the equivalent to 9 million yen. And the remainder, 36 million yen, would be what you need to finance. Now, we need to talk about a very important point, which is called the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, in a very simplistic way, refers to what would have happened to the money you used for your down payment if you had used it to invest it and how much return you would have had. Usually people refer to the stock market. In our case, we take our 9 million yen and we put it on the stock market. We're in Japan, so we put it on the Japanese stock market. But if you're in the US, you would have put it on the S&P 500, for example. The average return of the Japanese stock market up to 2021 was 4.6%. Then we compare that to the return of the residential real estate in Japan. It's about 3.3%. So we make the difference and our opportunity cost is those 4.6% minus 3.3% or 1.3%. Now that we have this 1.3%, we multiply it by our down payment of 9 million yen and we come up with 117,000 yen, which is our yearly opportunity cost with our down payment. Now, we still have to finance 36 million yen. The average interest rate, fixed interest rate for a 35-year loan in Japan is 1.85%. I know it's really low in Japan, and that gives you an interest rate on those 36 million yen of 666,000 yen. Now that we have all those figures, we can calculate what's called our cost of capital. How we do that is we take our opportunity cost of 117,000 yen, we take our financing cost of 666,000 yen, we divide it by our purchase price of 45 million yen for a total of 1.74%. And this is our cost of capital. Now comes the time to put everything together. Let's start with the property tax of 1.4%, which comes to 630,000 yen. The maintenance at 1% for 450,000 yen. Then our cost of capital, which is a total of 1.74%. The total is 1,863,000 yen divided by the cost of the house of 45 million, and the total is 4.14%. This 4.14% is going to help us determine the cost of ownership on an annual and monthly basis. So we take our purchase price of 45 million yen, multiplied by 14%, and no surprise, 1,863,000 yen is our cost of ownership per year. Divide by 12, and we arrive at 155,250 yen per month as a cost of ownership. Now we can compare apple to apple between renting and buying. In our example, renting was 192,000 yen a month. And now we know that buying cost 155,000 yen a month. So in our example, you're better off buying. I know that's a lot of different numbers. That's why I prepared this Google Sheet for you so you can put all the data based on your personal situation. There's going to be a link down below so you can copy it, download it, and use it the way you prefer. Please leave a comment down below if you find it useful, or leave a like, or both. Let's continue. Up until now, all our discussion was based on financials, but there are other aspects that you should consider when you want to buy your home. And the first one is fixed payment versus rent. If you have a 30-year mortgage, you know exactly how much you're paying every month to reimburse. Whereas if you have a rent, of course, your rent is fixed for a certain amount of time. But when your lease is up for renewal, your landlord can decide to jack up very fast your rent. And we've seen that happening all across the world. The second aspect, control over the home. It's your own place as long as you keep paying your mortgage. So if you want to change everything inside, outside, the colors, drill a hole in the wall, which I don't recommend if you don't know what you're doing, but it's up to you. You really control. This is your own place. The third one is inflation. This one is a little bit counterintuitive. When you have inflation like we've had in the past few years of very high inflation, actually you're putting money aside. Why is that? It's because your payment is fixed and the value of money tends to decrease. So actually over time, you're paying less for the house you have, and the house is actually appreciating at the same time. Very counterintuitive, but I'll put a link down below for you for an explanation about why inflation is good for home ownership. And I just talked about appreciation. Actually, over time, real estate, residential real estate, increases in value. It's very true in the US, in Europe, and it's been true in Japan, except for the last 30 years. But fortunately, in the past few years, finally, the real estate in Japan has started to increase as well, as I'm showing you on screen, and increase quite fast. So basically, you are creating value by buying a house. And finally, one very important is a sense of security. If you end up paying up your home, you have a place to retire when you finish working. Whether when you're renting, you never actually know where you're going to retire. You can be kicked out at any time for any reason that your landlord might decide. But if it's your home, you know at least where you can potentially have a nice retirement. And that's a really great feeling. And there's one more that I haven't put for you on screen. It's at least for me, a great sense of achievement. You've been able to find a place you like, a place you can afford, and a place that maybe in the future you can pass on to another generation. On the flip side, renting also offers a lot of advantages. The first of them is flexibility. Once your lease is up, you can move somewhere else that you prefer. If you have a job offer in another city, it's very easy for you to move and find another place to live. The second one is that you don't have to pay any maintenance, any property tax, or any mortgage. The only thing that you have to pay is the rent and utilities, obviously. So you know exactly how much you pay for as long as your lease is ongoing. And the last one is amenities. In a lot of places that you're renting, you have great amenities. It's especially true for apartments. You can have in a condo, you can have a gym, you can have a pool, you can have a reception area. If you want to have a party, like a rooftop, you also may have a balcony. And all of your garbage is taken care in one place, and all the common areas are usually cleaned up. That's also a very, very good thing to keep in mind when you're considering renting. The decision between buying and renting is not an easy one. You have a lot of things to consider and a lot of calculations to make based on your own personal situation. Though I hope the 4.14% rule and the spreadsheet are going to help you a little bit. If you like this video or learned something, please give it a like and do not hesitate to subscribe for more videos about Japan and personal finance like this one or that one here. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, goodbye.